So I'm going to be talking to you today about a seismic shift. If I get to that one. Got to do it with two hands here, a little bit like Jean-Michel Jarre, so we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to be talking today about a seismic shift in the domain market and the opportunity that new global top-level domains represents for your industry and for your businesses. So for any business, getting the right domain, as we know, is vitally important. It's often the first step that your clients, probably that you took on the web. And gTLDs, I think, and we certainly think here at Heart Internet, are a great opportunity to help drive the growth of your business, but also help your clients succeed as well. So let's get started. So since the launch of the .com around 25 years ago, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, that's a bit of a mouthful, I'm just going to call it from now on. So they're the Internet, really the Internet's governing body. They've slowly introduced new global top-level domains as they've deemed appropriate for public use. So obviously there was the original .com, and we had .net and .org. But then there's the lesser known, and I'm sure being experienced people, you all do know about them, but there's been more recent introductions like .name, .biz, .info, and so on. So these domains, they distinguish themselves from country-level domains like .uk and .fr because they're supposed to be designed for uses by organizations and brands no matter where they are in the world, and also websites that have an ambition to trade internationally. So in 2008, ICANN began a process to fundamentally change website names by introducing the possibility of an unlimited number of domain extensions that any company or individual could apply to manage. So ICANN basically said, we want to give people the choice to choose the word that comes after the dot. And we invite organizations to make suggestions about what those words might be. And they can also then get the chance to administrate these new extensions. So the application process, that was the first announcement in 2008. And the application process then took a long time. There's lots of wranglings. ICANN is a very complex organization, but the process closed at the end of 2012, and by that time ICANN had received over 2,000 applications for different types of domain extensions. So there were some really well-known companies that were applying for these extensions. Google applied for hundreds, Amazon did, Microsoft did, and there were also some startups that applied to run new domains. So these were people that you haven't heard of right now, but you might do in the future. So a couple of the better-known ones, one's called Minds and Machines. They're running the new .london. Another one is called Donuts, who have about 200 new extensions. So they took a long time to decide what was right. There were people that applied for the same extension. There were very similar extensions. They decided and awarded particular extensions. Some are still in contention. And the first one started to get approved at the back end of 2013. And they started to roll out and be released into the market in 2014. And what we're expecting to see, so these are the number of new extensions that ICANN have introduced over the years. You can see it really crawls along to the end of 2013. And within this first year, we might see up to 1,000 new extensions hit the market. So what are we seeing so far? You know, what's really doing well out of the new extensions? Well, .xyz is absolutely killing the market. They've registered almost 500,000 new extensions. Another big one is .berlin. They've registered over 100,000 new .berlins. Although don't necessarily believe the numbers and the hype around gTLDs, or I'm obviously here to hype it a little bit, but .xyz, they've given away about 400,000 of their 500,000 names. And Berlin certainly gave a lot away to residents of Berlin as well. So there is a little bit of chicanery there, but nevertheless, there have been some significant sales. So there are also some trends that we're starting to see. So businesses and consumers look like they're interested in buying domains that really signify what they do for their business and also where they're from. So as I said, I've talked a little bit about the numbers so far. So the take-up, despite the free giveaways and despite the hype, it looks to be pretty healthy. I mean, considering the fact that we're only at the start of this process, and it really only started back in January this year, we've seen sales rise at a very consistent rate. There's over 2 million of these new gTLDs been registered. So I think outside of the free giveaways, it shows that there is genuine demand for new gTLDs. So it looks like gTLDs are going to be here to stay, and they are also becoming more and more important every day. And this might be causing a few people to scratch their heads at VeriSign, the people who run .com. But if you're a small business, then choosing a domain name has all of a sudden got a load more complicated. It's not just about what might be available. All of a sudden, almost anything is available. I think it's good for you to be able to offer your clients some advice about what domain might be right for their business, their website, their brand. And there are some obvious starting points in order to decide what's right. So to start with, adopting a gTLD or advising your clients to adopt a gTLD is going to show that you are an innovator and an early adopter. And we're all in the technology space. And demonstrating your forward-thinking attitude by adopting a new gTLD could be a real boost for your brand. Then there are some really obvious choices to make. Your domain is one of the clearest signals that you can send to your website visitors and your customers about what industrial vertical you're in. So whether or not you're a photographer or a gallery owner or a clothes shop owner. So that's another thing to focus on. The other obvious signal, of course, as I mentioned before, is to let website visitors know where you are. So if location is important for your website visitors or your current customers, then a location-specific domain is going to be a really obvious choice. But aside from sending signals about your niche, adopting a new domain can help more clearly identify and define your brand. And a clearly defined brand really helps generate trust in your business and in your website and what you do. And the final benefit, in terms of these simple benefits, might just be one about the length of the domain. I mean, we all know it's very difficult to get a decent .com anything less than 7 or 8 characters. So if you are stuck with a long or hyphenated .com or a country code, adopting a new gTLD is an opportunity to grab a short and memorable domain name that might work better for your brand. And as resellers, as web designers, there's also an opportunity to look a little bit deeper into the domains market. So I think it's important to consider about what the size of the resell market is going to be in the future. So if we consider .club, for instance, there are just millions of clubs all over the world. Anything from nightclubs to sports clubs or whatever. .club is one of the biggest new domains, and there haven't been any given away so far as I know. So that might be an opportunity in terms of reselling domains. And another thing to consider is the length of the domain name. Is it short? Is it concise? Can you get something that's low cost, that's available, and that is short? .xyz, an unlikely contender, but short domains have value in them, and that's one of the reasons why outside of the giveaways, XYZ has been successful. And then the last thing to consider is, are you able to get value from domains? So most of these domains are about £20 to £40. I'm not sure if anyone is planning to buy a .rich soon, but it's going to be hard to turn a profit on that. So how do you convince your clients to buy new gTLDs? Well, it's a big change. It's one of the biggest changes in the history of the internet. And with any change, there is going to be reluctance. There's going to be people who are dragging their heels, and there's going to be a lot of fear around it as well. So one of the first things to consider is for your clients is what the domain name says about them. For example, pjbdesign.com, it's it's an okay domain name. It's not too long. It's on a .com, but it is also quite generic. It might be a lot more have a lot more memorability if it was on a gTLD like .london or .guru or .media, and it would certainly give that domain a lot more personality. It's also worth considering and moving simply beyond just brand protection. So if you're in a pitch or for some new business and you've got an innovative competitor who's decided to go for a gTLD, it might be just the bit that gives them the edge in that pitch. The price for not doing anything, for not adopting a gTLD, might be that you lose out in those circumstances. And then there are some other ideas about the opportunity around gTLDs. So one school of thought that's been spoken about quite a lot in the press is that there might be a dramatic increase in the number of branded social and community sites as people look to reduce their reliance on third-party platforms like Facebook or Twitter. So there might be lots of opportunities for design agencies with expertise in this field to pitch for new business from some pretty big clients. Because it's not hard, for example, to think of an online clothes store that wants to build an active community around a .fashion domain, or even a newspaper that wants to build an active community on a .blog or .press. And as I mentioned before, these new domains are often going to be important for companies and brands to demonstrate where they're from. So a hotel firm that sets up in London might want to use a .london domain name to promote content simply for that city. So if you are a web designer that has experience of creating superb localized sites, then there's a potential for you to pitch for business on the local level from clients that have previously just concentrated on having a national or an international presence. So what's going to be the impact on search, and how can you advise your clients when it comes to adopting a gTLD on search? Well, the reality is it's all still quite new, and Google hasn't really figured out how they're going to deal with gTLDs. But at the moment, from what we've seen, it looks like they certainly have an even footing with those other older gTLDs. So adopting a new gTLD is not going to really change the fundamentals of the SEO strategy. What really counts right now is going to count for gTLDs. So, having a site that's easily crawlable with relevant content that gets regularly updated and that has good link equity, that's the stuff that is still going to count. But what might be relevant is if your clients decide to adopt a gTLD, then you're going to need to make sure that they're following SEO best practice in terms of that adoption. So that includes things, for example, like updating Google Webmaster Tools, making sure you do a page-by-page redirect, a 301 redirect, and then getting all of the old links that pointed to the old site as much as possible to point to the new site. And then, of course, it becomes about promoting the new domain and getting links to that new domain. So just 3 things to consider then for gTLDs before I finish. We believe that gTLDs are a significant future in internet naming. So they're not going to replace .coms and country names, and nothing is going to happen quickly or overnight. But over the next 3 or 5 or 10 years, gTLDs will become much more commonly adopted by some pretty well-known websites. And which gTLDs remains to be seen. But as a designer and a reseller and someone working in the domain space, you need to make sure that you're right on top of that trend. Without a doubt, the domain market has become saturated, and it's really difficult for a small business or a startup business to find a domain that really represents their brand or represents their business. With a new gTLD, you and your customers, your clients, you've got the opportunity to get a name that really represents your business. And it's an opportunity that exists right now. It wasn't 5 years ago. It might not be 5 years in the future. It's an opportunity right now to create a really unique position for your brand. And at the moment, we're telling people or advising people, customers, to buy gTLDs that look interesting, but to continue to hold your traditional ComNet org and your country code. So we're advising, protect yourself right now if you think there's something out there that looks interesting. Watch the market, and we'll try to keep you up to date with news about what's coming and what's working out there in terms of gTLDs. Before I close, a little case study. We have a client called Oho. Now they're called Oho.guru. They used to run on a long .com extension. They switched over to .guru within a couple of weeks of .guru launching. Very happy to make the switch. For them, they're a kind of chic homeware retailer, and it's a chance for them to really change their website, make it unique, make it memorable. You know, that's a switch that they've been happy to make. Did that change? Okay. So we think that the gTLDs are a significant future for internet naming, and it's an opportunity for you to get involved and start talking about with your customers.